I'm Chad Ruthermond,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. That's why. Today, we're going to be talking about Firewatch, which was released in 2000 and... Oh, wow, okay. This is another one, huh? That's just on everything.
Yep.
This is a game that was released in 2016 on Windows, OS X, Linux, PS4, and Xbox One, and then released in 2018 on the Nintendo Switch. The game was developed by Campo Santo, and it was published by Panic, and also Campo Santo. Firewatch is a walking simulator style game. It's a story-based, conversation choice-based, open world exploration game. Though the exploration is pretty heavily guided, I would say. It's not that open.
Mm-hmm. I think we were talking about maybe Vanishing of Ethan Carter or some other walking sim game, and you brought this one up as another walking simulator, and it totally is one, but it was weird to me for you to refer to it that way because for some reason I don't really think of it as one. Like in my mind, it's more of just like a narrative game. But you know, that's just like it was a weird personal distinction that I didn't realize I had made until you brought it up.
Yeah, I think that we are, as a society, past the point of pure quote unquote walking simulators, like games whose express purpose is just to put you in an environment and have you move around and tell you a story like pretty passively. So things like Dear Esther is like a pure walking sim, and like mentioning this in the same breath as Vanishing of Ethan Carter is really appropriate because I think both of them are walking simulators that take something out of that and put in like other elements. With Vanishing of Ethan Carter, there's actual puzzle solving to do, which takes it, I think, further away from the genre than Firewatch is. And with Firewatch, it's that it is... I mean, it's made by people who are alumni of Telltale games, and you can see the sort of like branching story structure come from that, though I don't know how much of it was influenced, I guess, in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I played this game this time with the developer commentary turned on, so if I'm more full of fun facts today than usual, that's why.
Yeah, just like a quick aside about that. It seemed like a really weird implementation of that sort of thing to me because they're on these little tapes that you find, and having to like it feels like that doesn't gel with the gameplay at all because it plays over the dialogue. Like a lot of the actual game is listening to people talk to each other.
Yeah.
And if you want to just listen to the commentary, you kind of just have to put the controller down and stand still.
Right.
And wait.
Which is mostly what I did.
Yeah.
I've played this game. This is my third time through it. Because I think that we can take the talk about the developer commentary short and make it into something that we can talk about as far as design goes, because it's obviously designed for people who have played the game before. Which makes you don't buy a DVD and then watch the movie for the first time with the director commentary on. And so the assumption is that you either know what the dialogue is or you're mostly there to hear the developer commentary. I was in kind of like a middle ground because I played this in 2016 when it came out, and I played it again in 2018. When it came out on Switch. I didn't even know it was on Switch until today. But I then I played it this third time with the commentary on. So it had actually been a while since the last time I played it. So there were definitely moments where I was like, I'm answering questions I can't hear.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that what I'm saying is like in line with what I want to do. But in the end, it didn't really matter anyway. So
Right. I like the idea of like putting it in the game. But it just seems like it doesn't mesh with how the game is designed.
Yeah. I will say it does mesh with this quality of the game that I want to talk about, in that the way that they do it, as you described, you find these tapes and the tapes are on these little kiosks that have cassette tapes and a light on them and a sign, and it's like in the game, in fiction, it is the Firewatch guided audio tour, and your character at the beginning of the game pulls a pair of headphones out of his backpack and puts them on like when the game starts, and it's entirely diegetic, like it's supposed to be something that is happening in game, and I love that shit. And
yeah, me too.
Similarly, they go out of their way to make sure that this is the only non-diegetic elements in this game are music cues, and even a lot of those sometimes have like a reason for being. Like there's the whole the teen zone where you have the boombox that's playing a song, and so like that music is like explained. But the big one, the obvious one, is the map, which they did say and this is unsurprising if you're familiar with Campo Santo as people and as podcast hosts. But it was inspired by Far Cry 2's map, which is some shit that they talk about all the time. But it is, I love the implementation of the map, and I like the fact that little points of interest get revealed to you and marked on it with a pencil, and that you hold it and have like a physical compass that you hold in your hand and like orient yourself and move around. I think it's really well done. It's my favorite UI element of the game.
Yeah, I like the map too, and I think it has some similar strengths to the map in Hollow Knight, which is maybe one of my favorite maps in games, where like you pull it up with one button and you just hold in the button and your character keeps walking with the map up. Like it just is a really smooth implementation of it. And this has a similar thing where you pull out the map and you have the compass there and you can keep walking along with it up. You know, like how you'd actually use a map.
Right.
So you just want to be able to pull it up, get the information, put it back. And yeah, I feel like that should be a thing that more developers should be aware of. Like, start doing it like this.
Yeah, like if you have to like press a pause button and watch like an animation and then tab over to the map screen, and like some games have like a one button open the map kind of thing, but I like this sort of in-game map that actually doesn't make you stop moving to use it.
Yeah. And it's like much better, I think, than a mini map. Like, it accomplishes the same thing, and I think in a just more natural way. Instead of just having the information right up there in the corner of the screen at all times, taking your attention away from what's happening on the rest of the screen and just looking at the corner, pull up the map smoothly without having to stop moving, get that info, and put it back. And you can pull it up and down smoothly and quickly. Like, I just think that's better.
Yeah. And I like that. So we got this far. We haven't even mentioned that this game takes place in a forest, in the Shoshone National Forest, probably. But it is like, it's a fairly dense wooded area, and there are paths and like a lake and landmarks. And the beauty of the map is that you can look at the map and it has trails marked on it. But because it is like an open world, natural kind of environment, you can sort of draw lines from where you are to where you want to go and make the decision to like, oh, maybe if I cut through this thicket, I can make it there a little bit faster. Like, you can make those real world navigational decisions. And the game doesn't stop you from doing it. There are areas that are like untraversable, but it doesn't like say follow the path at any point. You just kind of do what you want.
Yeah, I found those kind of non-traversable parts of the map to be a little bit too abundant, that I always just followed the paths, personally. But you're right, it is an option there. And I think I really like, there's like some subtler ways that like options are sprinkled in like that, where whenever you come by those little boxes, I don't know what you would call them, but there's these little...
the cache boxes?
Yeah, cache boxes that you unlock with the little code. And they'll have maps in them with, like, trail markings on them. And you can fill those in on your own map. And if you wanted to, you don't have to do that. Like, you could turn off the thing that shows you where you are on the map. You could not take that information from the boxes, and you could just go total wilderness explorer man and explore the wilderness with nothing but your wit if you felt like it. So, like, those kind of options, like, you can make it harder for yourself if you want to, or you can make it easy for yourself if that's what you want as well.
Yeah. And none of it takes away from the overall goal of the game, because that goal, like the conversation that's happening between your character and Delilah, is so sort of, like, laid back that if you choose to be the Bear Grylls of Firewatch and just sort of try and make it on your own, just like learning landmarks and figuring out where things are, then you end up like it still works. Like the game works in both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about the actual like point of the game, the narrative, where you have more design stuff?
Yeah, let's jump into the narrative. That's like the meat and potatoes of the game, I think.
Yeah. So this game starts with a purely like Twine game text choice opening that is there, that's supposed to set the scene for who your character is. Because you are playing as like a distinctive character, and they want your past relationships to have an effect on how you make choices. They present everything sort of in slideshow fashion, and it's kind of briefly broken up by these gameplay segments where you're just moving from one place to another. I do want to mention that according to, and I don't remember if this is in the game or if it was in the commentary, but evidently the hike that he takes from where he leaves his truck,
It's 2 days.
yeah, it's like a 14-hour hike or something. That's so wild, and I would never do that.
That is in the game. Yeah, no, the whole premise of like what he's doing here is something you would never do.
Yeah, I mean, this was also, because this game takes place in, I think, 1989 or 1990.
Something like that.
Yeah, and it is like, so obviously there's different, I'm used to more modern comforts than Henry is. But good God, though, like I feel like the 2-day hike would be the killer. Though I guess it was, they like talked to people who actually did Firewatch like for a living, and a lot of them were like, well, a lot of them apparently were like, wow, and why are you making a video game about this? And apparently, like, the hardest part of the job is just not being bored until you're insane.
Right. Cabin fever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm the type of person that, like, in my adult life, if I had, like, 3 months that I could just take off, I would actually like doing this. My weird thing that I wouldn't like is that fact that the tower is just, like, all windows. Like, I don't like sleeping with open windows, and you have to leave them open to watch for fires, I assume. So that would bug the crap out of me, even though there's no one around for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. I feel like I don't like things being able to see in to me sleeping.
Yeah, it is actually, because it is also a park. Like, it's a national park that's just a literal open wilderness. So, like, it's not like you know that there are no people for miles and miles.
Yeah.
There could be someone outside your window right now. Like,
exactly.
This could be a horror game if you played it right.
There could be sexy teenagers coming to sabotage your tower.
Yeah. Or is it? Anyway,
Ooh.
Spoilers ahead.
But the thing I like about the intro is it sets up this plot, or how you met your wife, and then how she develops Alzheimer's or dementia of some kind. And I think it's a pretty short sequence, but manages to hit pretty heavy based on how it's presented. It's no Up. Not many things are, but like it's that kind of a thing where it sets up a relationship and then it goes south, and it hits you emotionally pretty hard for how short of a intro it is.
Yeah, I want to say it's in like the same. Now, this may be just a fundamental difference between the two of us, but I think it is at least in the same league as Up, as far as, like, its goals are the same, obviously, but its execution, I think, is pretty good as well. And I personally, what makes this narrative, not the narrative of the intro, but the narrative of the entire story, work for me is that Julia is not killed, right? Like, Julia doesn't die. Julia is put in a state where Henry doesn't recognize her anymore, as like she's not like the same person to him. And that's sort of like the central ambiguity of the entire, like, your decisions as you go forward. And the game doesn't give you concrete answers, which is a theme that we'll come back to. And I think that's way more emotionally effective than just having the character die, which is what happens in Up. I'm not going to say it's better than Up, because it has, like Up has a beautiful score, and, like, you have these expectations that it really, like, shatters in a way that you don't expect as early in the movie as it is. It's a really, like, this game suffers by coming after Up, because Up, like, established this, and Firewatch is doing a version of it that is different, but is going to be compared. So I want to say they're in the same league, but Firewatch is, like, a bad team in that same league.
Okay. I'm going to say, yeah, Up, I think, pound for pound, for the amount of time that is spent on it, the emotional impact puts it at like an S tier.
Okay.
And whereas I think Firewatch is maybe more like an A.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, it puts a lot more of the emotional weight on stuff that comes after the intro as well. Whereas, like, Up puts it all out there in the first, like, 9 minutes, and it could stand alone as, like, its own short film.
Right. It would be an incredibly depressing short film, because Carl then never grows. He's just devastated, and the credits roll.
But anyway, enough about Up.
Right. But talking about this intro, though, the reason that it works, the thing that it does really well, is that it gives you choices that mostly don't matter, that are little things, decision points in, like, your life. And everything, as you go through, like, all of the little bits, like, they're minute enough, but they're also, like, presented in the same light as everything else. So you do feel like you form an emotional connection, even in the short time. And it does a good job of setting up Henry as a person, how you are playing him as well. Like,
yeah, I think it does a good job, at least it did for me, or, like, I didn't know where this game was going. I think most of the way through it, I felt like I didn't know where it was really going. And so for me, I never felt like I knew, like, what stuff was important and what wasn't. And I think that makes it more effective. Like, you take each question a little bit more seriously when you're not thinking about how the game's going to use your answers for X, Y, and Z. Like, you're just kind of taking it as it is.
right.
So I think this game did a good job of, like, making me take that stuff seriously in a way that, like, some games I wouldn't.
Yeah. This game treats dialogue choices interestingly. I think that this game uses dialogue choices explicitly to do the things that other games try to do with them implicitly by imposing mechanics on them. Where I think in Firewatch, the main goal of your dialogue in the game is to, like, develop in your head what the relationship is. And they obviously have a ton of branching narratives depending on what you choose to say. But the game always ends in a similar way. There is one wild alternate ending. If you just choose not to get on the helicopter, it just flies away and you can die. But, it's maybe you just live out in the woods forever. I don't know. But it plays out in a similar way, more or less, regardless of what you do. So, yes, the dialogue changes, and yes, your options will change. But for the most part, like, it is entirely like an intellectual and emotional mechanic, more so than it is like a distinct game. You still do the same things every day.
Yeah, it's more like reflexive, I think. Like, it makes you think about the way you perceive, like, it makes you think about the way you've interacted with it, I think. Like, the way you chose to handle Henry's situation and his relationship with Delilah. Like, I don't know. I think it's really good at that, like, making you think about your own choices in, like, a critical way.
Yeah. And it's one of because a lot of games, I think, reward you with this kind of system for making consistent choices, like making the same type of choice every time will, like, it increases your Paragon score, or like this character won't die now or something. But this game allows for a little bit of wiggle room where you can sort of choose what things you want to treat seriously and what other things you want to treat as more of a joke. Plus there's like a meta element of like getting weird dialogue options, like finding stuff in the world or following a particular dialogue tree to a conclusion that maybe you didn't think it was going to get to, which it does. It makes the dialogue choices are the biggest decision points of the game. It's like that and choosing whether to name the turtle Turt Reynolds or Shelley Duvall. Those are the two hardest choices for sure.
Yeah, I feel like the dialogue choices do a good job at like putting you in Henry's shoes, or like aligning the player and the character, because like it's like, do you flirt with Delilah on the night when she's getting drunk, and then the next day I think you're more likely to regret that decision like Henry would in this game, because it kind of makes you think about it more in the way like it's a decision you're actually making in your real life.
Yeah. And you can
it blurs those lines, I think, pretty successfully.
Yeah. And there's a choice where you can choose to like put your wedding ring back on. Like there's a night where you take it off and sit it on the table, and you can put the ring back on, and I think at that point it just remains on for the rest of the game if you do. And I don't know if that affects dialogue decisions. I know that I did put it back on, but I don't know. I didn't really think about it. But the moment that I did put it on, I started to. I was like, what are the implications of this? Like, what does it mean if Henry puts the ring back on now? Like, after you've gone as far as you have. Because I think the underlying question of the game is, does Henry consider his relationship with Julia to still be like a valid relationship? And the game doesn't tell you if your answer to that is right or wrong. It just tells you like what happens in the immediate moment.
Right.
And we've gone all of this way talking about this part of the story without mentioning that there's like a whole conspiracy narrative that they put in to sort of drive mystery. And I don't know how I feel about it.
Okay, so story time. If you've listened this far and you haven't played the game, and you've decided to play it by yourself, because I normally actually highly recommend playing like narrative adventure games like this with other people. But this one, I think it kind of ruins the experience, because the whole core of it is like the intimate relationship between Henry and Delilah. And the first time I played this, I played it with Dan and Janelle, who are friends of the podcast.
Right.
And it really kind of leads to like a flaccid experience, because there's really no tension between Henry and Delilah when you have that moral compass of other people there. Like, you just take a hard stance, at least we did, we're like, we're not going to cheat on Julia, she's still alive,
right? Like,
we're going to be faithful. So there was really no tension there, and so we kind of hyper focused in on the conspiracy plot, like the X-Files story. And then when that ends up just being a red herring, you end up with like, well, I just kind of played a game where I hiked in the woods and then left.
Yeah.
So my first experience with this was not great.
Right.
So I want to save other people from that if I can.
No, and
play this by yourself.
That's accurate. I feel like it's hard to tell when you first pick up a game whether it's going to be a game that is better experienced alone versus with other people. Because I'm with you on that. I think, like, especially adventure games, I feel like having other people smooths the experience a lot. Because those games are really obtuse, and having a second pair of eyes helps sort of, like, get through the tougher parts, whereas they're still narrative-based games, and you want to experience them for the story, and so you go through and you get a little bit of help along the way, and then you get to the end and you can actually do the thing that you came there to do. Firewatch does open with a thing that basically screams, do not play this with other people. It's like if you were filming Mystery Science Theater 3000 for Up, you would get through the first sequence and be like, all right, pick it up. Like, this isn't... That's not what this is for. Like, this game's opening, I think, is a pretty good indicator of that. But it's not something I considered, because I knew that you were playing it with other people, and I just was like, okay. And I was like, in a different... I didn't even think about it. I was like, they'll probably like it too.
Right.
And they didn't.
Yeah, I even think like something like Life is Strange, while not exactly the same kind of adventure game, is a game with a lot of intimate relationships and personal choices to make. And I still think that's a great game to play with other people. Like this specifically, like it wants you to play it by yourself.
Right. Yeah, there's an element, and not only that, but like the idea of the game, like from like a design standpoint, you are a character who is effectively alone in the woods doing a very boring job, and you have one other person that you talk to with any sense of regularity. And that is like the key to the ambiguity in the story, because you're in a situation where there is no other judgment, like in game, so you want to put yourself into that position in real life when you're playing it. So it's a very personal exploration. Like, am I the kind of person who thinks this? And so yeah, I agree. And then it gets into the conspiracy stuff, and you can allow yourself to get whisked away with it, where the final emotional payoff is still going to be there at the end.
Yeah, like having thought about it a lot after playing it the first time and not really enjoying it, and then coming back to it for this, I think like the point, like I was getting to earlier, I think the point of the conspiracy plot is to put you more in Henry's shoes. Like, he's doing this Firewatch thing as an escape, and when he's there, he's grasping at these straws, like this adventure that seems like it's presenting itself to him to kind of forget his problems and, just kind of be out here in the adventure woods for the summer with his long-distance girlfriend in the tower, across the valley or whatever. And in the end, it ends up being nothing. It's like a sweet dose of reality. Like, you can't really run from the problems. He has to deal with it in the end. Like, I think that's what it's going for. It's just, I feel like it's, for me, at least the way I experience the game personally, ends up being like an aggro situation for me, where I get what they're going for. I think they even successfully made me feel the way they wanted to, but I don't really enjoy it.
Right. Is it because of the adventure conspiracy plot, or is it because of the, like, flat ending?
I think the ending is fine. I just think it didn't... It's a combination of things. Like, I think it didn't work for me because the first time I played it, the, like, Delilah relationship was flat. So all my chips were on the conspiracy narrative, and when it ends up being nothing, it just was like, okay.
In defense of the conspiracy,
because I was like super into that part, and then it let me down.
The B plot of this game is, which is very easily mistaken for the A plot. It's like that the A-E letter, but it's a B instead,
right?
Because they're so close. But the B plot is like this story about there's a dad and his kid who used to
Ned
be
and Brian.
Ned and Brian.
I wrote their names down.
What's the last name?
I didn't write that down.
Got him.
I wasn't that prepared.
Yeah, we're gonna say Dennehy because of Brian Dennehy,
Okay, Ned and Brian Denny.
his son. But they were in one of the watchtowers as well, and Brian, the kid, was not supposed to be there. It was like illegal or whatever. He's not, maybe not illegal, not allowed by the rules of the Firewatch.
Mm-hmm.
So Delilah doesn't do anything about it though, because she likes the kid. She doesn't really like the dad. And so there's like she builds a relationship with this kid, sort of as like her character development in it is like she makes this relationship with the kid because she basically is supposed to be running everything, but she gets real bored and ends up talking to people a lot. So you end up with this situation where they leave at some point and nothing is ever said about it, and because nothing is ever said, in your head you're going, I bet there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
So about at the midway point of the game, maybe a little bit earlier, there's this sequence where you are attacked in the woods, like somebody punches you in the back of the head and knocks you unconscious, and then you start to like, you pull back, you think, oh, like, remember those teens from before, maybe they're related, but then you launch into this whole thing like, oh, there's a fence and there's like a base back there with a bunch of scientific equipment,
Radio tower.
yeah, like a radio tower, all this
But
stuff.
it's down in this little gully where like you can't see the tower from
Right.
any of the watchtowers.
Yeah, maybe the
It's a secret base.
it wasn't the teens at all, and
So the government is here doing some kind of experiments or something.
right, and then you find out the people have been listening in on your conversations. Enunciation is important for radio, and your tower gets broken into. So there's like all of these escalating things that are happening, pointing you that like you are the specific focus of some kind of plot, and so. This is all very exciting and mysterious in the moment. Like it's a great, it's a great, cool bit.
Yeah, it feels like an X-Files episode or something.
Right. The journey being better than the destination is a platitude that works most of the time, but when it is a mystery, the destination is kind of important.
It's very important. Yeah.
So the resolution of this is that it was Ned, the dad, whose son had died in a climbing accident. There's debate whether or not it was an accident or like if he killed him.
To me, it read like an accident, personally.
Yeah, I 100% am in the accident boat, but for some reason in my game, Delilah was hard set.
Oh, yeah?
At least this time. She was like, he murdered him.
That's not the way it went for me. So.
Yeah, your choices can like change how she takes it, but that's somehow I ended up with that one despite me personally being way on the other side.
Okay.
But and I actually like this resolution for what it's worth. I think that the fact that Ned actually is a conspirator. I mean, he's a lone conspirator.
Yeah, he's been living in a cave.
Mm-hmm. Like he's a weird mountain man.
Yeah. Now, it landed better for me on the second time. The whole game did, because I
Right.
played it by myself, and it had been 2 years or more than that, since I've played it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it landed better, and I did. It might be that I was braced for it, like I knew that it wasn't going to have some kind of crazy payoff. But I think it works for like the reasons I said. It's like because it was like a parallel mystery, right? Like what happened to Ned and Brian. It's kind of set up. It's not given as much importance. So then when it comes in that those two things tie together, like the base and the disappearance of Ned and Brian, like. It is a nice, and it actually like makes sense. Like you really feel like you uncover like a real world mystery. Like we actually figured out what happened here.
Right.
It's just not like a cool fictional mystery.
Yeah, and that I think is the key. I mean, there are some things in this game that are fantastical, like the fact that you would pick up and use the transmission detector, whatever it's called. as like a very beepy video game thing, and it just replaces your compass from that point on.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
I didn't either, especially because in the audio tour it has little like Scantron ass bubbles that you fill in whenever you pick up a tape, and it marks how many you have to pick up in the day. And after you get that, the last 3 days are just invisible because they're under it on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but that's not important for the main game. But so there's some like out there elements to this game, but for the most part it's very grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like the whole story with Ned and Brian, like I liked it more on subsequent playthroughs as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think your first time you feel let down because it is something different. But this is a game that benefits from multiple playthroughs, which doesn't necessarily mean that I recommend playing it more than once. But if you are going in for the first time and you skipped the last 10 minutes, but for some reason jumped in right here, so this is advice for no one, you have to keep in mind how grounded the game is and what, like, to expect. Like, don't set your expectations too high, and the actual human narrative, I think, is cool enough to compensate for maybe diminishing your own like wild imagination.
Yeah, I think that the game shoots itself in the foot a little bit because I think it sets up expectations for something more fantastic and then doesn't deliver on them. And again, I think it wants to do that because I think Henry has expectations of something cool to help him escape his life out here. So they want you to feel that way. I don't know how worth it that was to like, because they do a really good job, I think, of making you crave that government conspiracy mystery.
Yeah, I agree. I think that good job is commendable in itself, though. Like,
sure, yeah.
But yeah, I agree and disagree, but I think I'm harder on the agree on this. I think that like the mystery being as flaccid as it is part of the charm for me, but also makes it feel like it's pretty squarely the B plot as compared to like the emotional journey of Henry, which is much more like interesting in the post game life that you live.
Right. So I mean, like we have to mention the quality of the voice acting.
Oh yeah, it's fucking real good.
Henry does a great job. I don't want to not mention him because I think Delilah kind of steals the show. She kind of is the game. And like she does such a good job, I think, of making you want to meet that character. And then the fact that you never get to, like she stays an idea in your head, I think really works. Like, because you never actually meet any other characters in the game. You see the silhouettes of Ned and the sexy teens, and you see Brian's dead body, but you never actually like meet a character and actually interact with them in the game. And that there's this feeling of isolation, and the fact that she's just a voice on a radio, like very real, but also not present. Like there's an interesting dynamic and feel to that I think is really successful. I think it's the best thing about the game.
Yeah.
If I had to boil it down.
My fun fact is that the teen models
Or just a texture.
they actually were models, but they were just Unity's default model that they just put really far away and put some like obscuring haze over it.
Right.
But my real fun fact is that the Unity default male model just has a fully modeled dick. And so in their spare time, they put like some jorts on him. And they put it in like one of the, in a lot of the developer commentary things, it puts in these little environmental elements that just sit there in the game world as like another thing. And it's funny because they put in like 100 of these models in one area of like varying sizes and like distances, and they're all wearing jorts. I think some of them have like heart-shaped chest hair, and they put Henry's face on one just for like kicks. And it's
so
just
you get to see Henry's face.
you do get to see Henry's face in the developer commentary.
Crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, like that was my bit. But yes.
You think I like that they put jorts on him because it seems like it would have been way easier to just remove the geometry of the penis.
Oh yeah, but the jorts is that extra mile that really makes it worth it.
I wonder if that's why the dead body character models in Amnesia have a penis. Maybe it's the default Unity male model.
It could be. Though also that game was made in a different engine.
Right.
But they could still use the assets.
The Lovecraft engine, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from that. But no, yeah. Okay. Actually, going back to that, because I realized I never even responded to what you were saying.
You were distracted by penis.
I was distracted by jorts mostly. But the fact that you don't really see any other living people makes you want to see Delilah more, and that is the ultimate gut punch for a lot of players, from my understanding. Like, I personally, of my 3 playthroughs, I asked her to stay once, but I think that like the implication is that most people do. Like, they say, just wait for me, like I'll be there whenever. And
it does feel like the natural thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, you spent all that time, you feel like you'd want to at least like meet her once.
But no,
you don't get to. Yeah, I like that she lies to you, and I like how that's performed. It's very realistic. Like, I think it's really well done. But when you finally get to her tower at the end, I like the details you can find in it if you really stop and look. Like, she has the pork pond pork pond. Yeah, that was right. It just didn't sound right.
No, it never does.
The pork pond sign and a number of other things. I can't remember now because it's been a while. But
this is what I was looking up a second ago because I wanted to make sure it was available.
She drew that picture of you.
Yeah. Just to Google like Delilah, like Firewatch Henry pictures and look at some of them because they're all so fucking funny.
I wonder if they actually had somebody draw those and they just actually gave them the descriptions.
I've got the fun fact.
Oh, is that what they did?
Ollie Moss, who's the guy who he was the environment designer and like artist on the game. He drew like the iconic like cover image of the tower. And it did a lot of the work as far as like concepting went. And I guess what they wanted to do was take each answer that you give to her when you're describing yourself and attribute like something to it. And then he originally wanted to draw all combinations of it, but I guess there are like 8,000.
Yeah.
So he didn't.
What do they call that?
Permutations.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he ended up...
Those explode pretty fast.
Oh, yeah. So what they ended up doing was he drew elements for each answer and like some variations based on other answers you give, and then they procedurally assemble the image, which is funny, but and less time consuming and good. But do look that up if you get a chance, because it's great. But yeah, she has the pork pond sign. She has a Forrest Burns poster.
Yeah.
Which Forrest Burns is fantastic. He's terrifying in the best way, and I love him. But I guess when they made the character, they put that cardboard standee that's by your outhouse in the game as a physics object, and people used it as a surfboard in order to skip parts of the game, and so they took it out. Which I wish they would have left it in for like speed running purposes, but I guess it was like it broke some stuff pretty bad in QA testing, so it didn't make it in. But yeah, they made several images with Forrest Burns there, like because they found out Smokey the Bear was not in the public domain,
right?
And so, and one of the things they made was this poster of Forrest Burns with a shovel in black silhouette with these bright red eyes.
Very Mothman.
And they're like, we can't put this in the game, but they put it in Delilah's tower.
Yeah.
Like, she just has that terrible poster, and I love it.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know if it's really like a criticism or anything. I feel like it's maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity. Is I feel like they should have made her tower more visually prominent. Because like I didn't even notice that you could see it until they call it out, that like you can see her tower from your window. Like I don't know if it's the layout of the tower, like how the deck wraps around everywhere except the side where that faces her tower.
Right.
But like I just never really looked that way when I was in it. So I just feel like they could have done that like Disneyland principle that I've talked about, where you use like big visual landmarks to orient yourself. Like your tower and her tower could have been visible from more spots. But that's just like a art direction thing like that I was thinking about.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that her tower, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm just like visualizing it differently. It looks like a cowboy hat. No, that's a reference.
But it's really a microphone.
Yeah, to a very old episode of NOCLIP Pocket. But her tower to me looks like it's bigger or like wider in a place. And it's also built up on like a hill as opposed to being just like ground with sticks.
Right.
So it looks less visually distinct from the trees than your tower does. And so... yeah, I agree that it's hard. It was like when I was cued to look at the tower, I would take a second to remember where it even was. Yeah. So I don't disagree. I think that could have been more visually distinct. There is a cool moment in Ned's hideout when you get to the end of it. If you look out, like you can see both towers from where he is.
Yeah.
So it's got like... there's sort of an eerie quality to it.
Yeah, like I think
harks back to your window problem.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like like moments like that they could have had more of, where like you'd crest over a hill and you'd be able to see one of or both of the towers. You know, something to like orient yourself, give the space like a more of a sense of like realism or whatever.
I mean, it would make it...
it'd be harder to design for, but...
yeah. I'm thinking, like... okay, like, how do you feel generally about the visual design of this game?
I really like it. I like that it's stylized. It's got that, like the squared off fingers, like, you know, that you get every now and then in certain cartoons. It's like it's not really cel shaded, but it's got like a nice like bold swatches of color for how things are textured. You got like that bright yellow sign, like the logo,
right,
and everything. There's a lot of nice like golden sunlight coming through the trees. Like it's got a nice style and color palette, I think, for like a forest in a video game.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm glad that it's not just like realistic.
I agree, yeah. I love the concept of this game, I think. The description that I would give to the, like, aesthetic is like, cozy, which is strange, I think, for the tone sometimes. Like, when you're deep in the mystery part, they make it a point to set more scenes at night, which has, like, a blue hue to it as opposed to the like
gold
and orange that's in the main game most of the time. But yeah, like I think that there were times when it would be like this whole thing, and when you're talking to Delilah, God, maybe this was intentional the whole time and I'm just now picking up on it, is that most of the time when you're talking to Delilah about personal shit, it's during the day. And then when the mystery's in the thick of it, it's at the nighttime or you're in the cave. So take that criticism, get it the fuck out of here, and replace it with me saying, I think that was intentional and that was a good thing that they did and I liked it.
Yeah, it makes you think of Delilah as warm.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting into that player psychology.
Yeah, I mean...
making you associate her with nice, bright, golden, cozy sunlight.
Exactly. They want you to flirt. That's the whole thing.
They do.
Campo Santo says...
they want to tempt you.
I mean, that is true. It is a temptation, and I think ultimately you have to decide whether or not that is something that you should follow up on.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like that they've manipulated me with fall colors. And
Dude, you signed up to be manipulated, all right?
that is true. As we
You
say
wanted
on
the
this
game.
podcast,
You wanted the game to make you feel things.
as we say here on the podcast, we are here for the lies.
We are.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else?
I guess just a couple like rapid fire things. Like I like the digital camera, or not the digital camera, the opposite.
Yes.
The disposable camera. That's the word. It's a nice fit for like a explore the nature game, and I also like on this playthrough. I don't know if I thought this the first time, but I found myself taking pictures of like the conspiracy stuff. I'm like, I'll have evidence.
Right. Yeah.
If you never need it, but it's a nice fit. I enjoyed messing around with it. And you get an achievement for using all the photos, but I was specifically trying not to use them all because I was like, what if I need to take a picture of something later?
You are prompted to take, I think, 2 pictures.
Yeah.
But you don't have to, and whatever, I don't know. I filled it up this time. I've never filled it up before. I've taken like sporadic pictures here and there, but this time I made it a point to actually complete the whole thing. Complete. This is a video game. I completed this camera.
I guess that was the only thing I hadn't mentioned. I thought there was at least one other thing, but there isn't.
All right.
Fire thoughts?
We've definitely done fire thoughts before.
Really?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm like 1,000% certain we've done fire thoughts.
Flapjack thoughts? That's what Delilah would call them.
Yeah. That's what I'll go with. I like it.
So my flapjack thoughts are, I feel like I kind of fucked this game up for myself, unknowingly, by playing it with other people, because I feel like this would have been extra effective on me if I'd played it by myself the first time. Like, I think I really would have felt pulled in 2 different directions. I would have felt that temptation. I totally would have flirted with Delilah. I think it would have landed really well with me. And if I had that mystical, magical, hypothetical redo button where I could play it again fresh, I would totally hit that button. But as it is, I really try to separate myself from my first playthrough when I was replaying it, and it landed a lot better the second time. It does still feel like fairly experimental how they deliver the narrative. And I think it's mostly successful, but I still do think the conspiracy plot's maybe laid on a little bit too thick, is a little bit too tantalizing, and then pulls the rug out from under you a little bit too hard that you fall down and you hit your head. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It stands out in my mind, though, so maybe it was worth it in a lot of ways as well. It's unique. I like that it takes chances, and it did make me feel the things they wanted me to feel. So there are a lot of successes here. It's hard for me to really take this game for what it is based on my initial experience with it. But I want to give it more credit than I did initially years ago. So I like this game, and I hope that Valve lets them make stuff other than VR games.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to see more from them.
Yeah. Campo Santo had another game announced last year, the year before, that was like, it was like set in Egypt. And
yeah, it looked cool.
Yeah, it looked very neat. And it was like a 2-person sort of narrative focused thing. And I was excited for it, but it seems as though it has all but been canceled at this point. With any luck, I mean, obviously they're doing well for themselves, which is good. I like that. But I would love to see their sort of like creative vision come out a little bit more. Because my final thoughts, I like this game. This is a game that I guess full disclosure, this isn't being a fan of something is not something that needs disclosed. But the people who made this game, and specifically Chris Remo, Jake Rodkin, and Sean Vanneman, were all hosts of a podcast called Idle Thumbs, which is arguably the podcast that inspired me, at least, to want to start a podcast. And they went on to do Important If True, but then the whole Valve thing and all of their content outside of that kind of got shut down. So because of the like parasocial relationship that was built up, when they talked about them making a game, I was like, well, fuck, I gotta play that game. And like, they're the kind of people like us, like if we made a game and put it out, people would be like, oh, now the critics get to see it, like, oh, how they're done, but we don't have experience in the industry at all. But they do, so they were able to make the game and release it on a bunch of stuff, and it's like a 3D game, and they hired professional voice actors.
Right.
So, like, it came out, it was a real game, and I was excited to play it. So my expectations were definitely pretty high, and I was almost like predisposed to like this game because of that. But on replays, I like it as much, if not more. The commentary is totally worthwhile if you are a fan of this game or a fan of games being made, because they go into like an unprecedented amount of like technical detail, things that I didn't expect them to talk about, like what they did to like how the program was structured and saved, and like what they did to reduce like stuttering and to occlude things that aren't being used, and visually how everything worked, and that they sourced duck sounds and that they called the thing that creates the smoke particle effect in the last day of the game the Henry Smoke. It was the Henry Smoke Barfer. Which is a great name. And so all of that sort of came together, that I knew I was going to enjoy this game, and I did enjoy this game. But I think that the emotional impact of this game can't really be understated. I think that it is very good, and I think that that leans pretty heavily on that voice cast and how, like, dedicated those performances are. Because there's a lot of dialogue in this game, and they probably had to record a whole lot to do what they did. And so I'm impressed by the scope of the narrative, and I think most of the shortcomings of the game are all sort of like technical in nature. And I don't know, taken together, I like it. I didn't hamstring myself on the first playthrough, but otherwise I feel similarly to Andy.
Yeah, really wish I wouldn't have played it with other people. Yeah. If only I would have known.
The woodpecker cried.
Yep. The bark on the trees was as soft as the skies.
It even thematically fits with the game. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP. And no, I don't know what that means.
I played the first hour of it, and I don't understand what it means. Like, I think it's just a silly title.
It is kind of a silly title, yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, we will let you know next time. The first thing we'll talk about is that. And then you can decide if you want to play based on your like extended play. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to all of our old episodes. You can hear us talk about The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, which we've already talked about on this episode, and some other shit.
What Remains of Edith Finch.
Yep, that one gets mentioned often. It's very
a great
good.
Game.
You can also find links to our YouTube, our Discord, where you can comment on the videos. You can watch the videos and see not on this one.
Yeah, not in the pockets, but the main podcast for capturing video now, if you want to watch on YouTube.
Yeah, a little bit more dynamic. And on Discord, you can be like, man, I don't know why you're doing this. Nobody watches on YouTube. That's wild. Or you can tell them, if you came there from YouTube, hey, fuck you, I do. See you later.
feeling tangenty today.
God damn it! This like every tourism board for every state has a slogan.
Mm-hmm.
The slogan for Wyoming is just "That's Wyoming!" exclamation point.
Classic Wyoming.
But I think it's supposed to be pronounced "That's why," but it's like WY, like the fucking postal code.
That's why. Oming.
I almost want to use it just because of how bad it is.